Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
So guys, I really think we should have a podcast before the podcast. I've said this like 75 times. It's always a great time. But here's where we got a problem. Is it Giovanni, right? That's how you say it. I didn't even ask her name. Look, that's how we roll. We just get into flowing. So we have a bigger issue. Say it for me.
Giovanna.
I got to do it like that? Giovanna?
No, you can say Giovanna, just with the A at the end.
So the story is, we're going to hear about your story, but the story is you're from Canada, but now you live in Mexico. Mm-hmm. A lot of that was going on during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I don't remove like the restrictions, right? And I don't even talk about COVID that much. But like move that aside.
Yeah.
Who were you before you went? So who were you before you went to Mexico, and who are you now? And what has it taught you?
Excellent question. I would say, just to give some sort of background, Austin and everyone else listening in, I've probably spent well over 10 years now. We might be going on year 12 or 13, traveling the world. So Mexico wasn't sort of like this first time leaving the country, seeing something new. I think this would be my 34th country. Okay. So not necessarily walking into anything totally revolutionary and life-changing in that sense, that it was a totally different culture. I already came in here actually speaking Spanish, so that made my life a lot easier. However, what I didn't expect, and what is not traditional of my travels, is to actually have met so many Americans and Canadians, which is ironic because I'm in Mexico. Yeah. However, what seemed to have been the case is that all of us expats fled here around the same time.
Yes.
So huge concentration of—
What were y'all in search of?
I think it was more like we're able to work from anywhere in the world, and this is closest to our home, and they are letting us in during COVID when it's cold out.
Well, I think what's interesting about people is they haven't clearly defined, like the question is, that is a simple question, right? Like, if you could work and have the freedom that you want, at the end of the day, does it truly matter how much you make?
Yes and no. I don't know if you want me to say why.
No, go. No. Yeah, go.
I'm of the belief that we don't necessarily need, so there's actually statistics on this, like when people reach different points in their finances, like you can see it on a graph. So the difference between, let's say, somebody making 20,000 and 60,000 actually is big enough that will change your lifestyle. Whereas someone that's making, let's say, 250,000 to maybe even 350 or 400,000, maybe at that point, not so much, you're comfortable. Then if we take like 400,000 and bump that to like 1.5 million a year, that again is going to change your lifestyle drastically. So I would say, there's like points in time or points in that graph where you don't really notice a lifestyle change. And then there's major like upgrades where you're like, oh yeah, okay, this definitely changes my lifestyle. With all that being said, I'm of the belief that the amount of money you want to make should be in direct respect or relation to the type of lifestyle and experiences you want to have. Because I'm a big believer in, like, we live in this life to have experiences. And some people's experiences that they enjoy are actually really cheap. And other people's experiences that they enjoy would be really expensive. So, there's people out here, for example, in Mexico that love kite surfing. And that's an expensive hobby. Like, that's just naturally is not cheap. So I say, okay, the amount of money you should make should be in respect to that hobby that you enjoy. And you should be able to enjoy it whenever you want. You shouldn't feel restricted to be able to enjoy the hobbies that you want to experience. Some people really enjoy fine dining. That requires a little bit more money. other people really couldn't necessarily care and they'd love to go to a mom and pop store, and restaurant and enjoy that experience, in which case you don't need to make so much money. So I kind of say, check in with you. What are the hobbies you enjoy? What are the experiences you enjoy? And then you want to match your lifestyle accordingly. And I think that is what will make you happy.
You just encapsulated the entire reason for the podcast. Like, meaning like it's how to build a lifestyle, not a bank account, right?
Yes.
And the thing is that somebody asked me the other day, like, what's happiness? And I said, happiness is a skill that you learn. Right. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm born with it or I'm not born with it. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. The thing is like cultivating a lifestyle is a skill that you learn as well too.
Definitely.
And so you're figuring it out. You're trying, you're moving, you're okay, that works, but that doesn't work. I don't like how that makes me feel. Totally. Like, you know what I don't like? There's very simple. I will lose my shit. I mean, like I'm like a 12-year-old and I will lose my stuff. A meeting after 3:00 on Friday.
Okay.
Ain't happening. Okay. Ain't happening. And to be honest with you, meetings on Friday, period. Okay.
Fair.
Now that's my game. Well, guess what? On Monday, I'll go from 7 a.m. to 7:00 at night.
Yeah.
But that works for me.
Yeah.
Right. That took 3 to 4 years to figure that out.
And I really love that you're saying this, Austin, because I think that's you tuning into what your needs are and what feels good for you. And I also love that you said it took you 3 to 4 years to figure it out, because sometimes it's not so obvious.
Well, it's crazy, right? Because I'm such a hard charger and we have so much going on and there's so many things I'm balancing. I front load my week, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday starts leaning. Like Thursday at like 1, it starts sliding off. Okay. I can't just go full on and then weekend. I need to feel the weekend in, right? Okay. And so I've learned that about myself, to kind of like I can go all day on Monday, but that's me knowing on Sunday, I'm already diving into that day.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so I think a lot of people, they're just haphazardly using their calendar and they're not paying attention to how they feel. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, should you chase passion or money? I said, neither. Chase energy. Where do you show up? Where do you feel the most excited? Do more of that. And I promise you, everything else will take care of itself.
110%. I wonder if energy is associated with passion. And at the same time, you need to feel good financially also inside of that passion, which really comes full circle back to what you said, is energy, right? I'm always of the belief that I say, do you feel more expansive or contractive in whatever it is that you're doing, or whoever it is that you're talking to or, interacting with? And I think our bodies are always signaling to us if we're actually listening. And, even last night, a roommate of mine was saying to me, he's like, I'm invited to go to this wedding out in Germany and another one in LA, but I'm comfortable here. I said, okay, so what is your body saying? Like, is it, expanding and getting excited about these weddings? He's like, no, I'm actually totally contracting. And that's what I said. I was like, so dude, maybe
I did that last year. And it sounds so crazy because it was a client and I could have made it happen. And I could have made it, but it would have been like literally like 30 hours of traveling back and forth for me.
Okay.
And it took me like 3 weeks to muster up the courage to say I didn't want to go. I think living in my truth and saying I didn't want to go was probably the most powerful thing I did all year. Amazing. Like that moment, because it signified so many more things in my life.
Okay.
It was the first time in my life I made decisions based on what I wanted instead of what everybody else wanted.
And it is so powerful because I think it signals to the brain that we actually can stand in our power. And beyond that, I think it makes us that much more authentic with a person. And I'm such a big believer in transparent communication that.
And not to mention, no offense, and I have one coming up and we debate about having it at all. So it doesn't really matter because I've already had one and I'm about to have another one. Weddings are dumb. Like weddings are so stupid. Like the wedding should be for the bride and the groom and the mom and the dad or whoever. And even then it's pushing it. Why do you need to trape your fucking friends all across the country and spend all this money to go? I'm sorry. I don't care if people get upset.
So, so maybe I'll only give you one potentially good reason. Just
okay. Fair enough. If you're a photographer, yeah.
No, not even that. That's not even good enough. No. And it's funny because I've said this to my friends. I think because I've lived in a couple different countries and done so much traveling, I've always said probably the only one day of the year that I'll actually be able to have all the incredible people I've met in my life together in one space would be my wedding. Because I can't imagine, and like, I can't imagine.
You know what? There is something, I'm about to get a little crazy on you real quick. There is something really magical about putting your old friends, your new friends, and your work friends together in one place.
Yeah. Totally.
It's such a weird, it feels like there's 3 U's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Not to mention, and I find this really funny, Austin, half of my life I've been called Jenny and the other half of my life, Giovanna. And that kind of got cut down to G. Most people call me G at this point.
Okay.
So I also, if we're talking about 3 different versions of ourselves, I feel like that.
Well, I was called AJ.
Oh.
And I changed it to Austin because Austin was my great grandfather's name. So I was called AJ up until I was 19. So you have my old friends who know me as AJ, and then everybody else knows me for it as Austin. I actually haven't heard AJ in a long time. But yeah, it was really weird, right? Because there's like, it's so crazy.
Transition. You're like, this is another identity. What do I do with it?
So I have a question. So technically, what is your, if you have to put labels on people, what is it that you focus on for business and work? Is it relationship coach? Is it a relationship?
So you could say that. Some people say communication and connection expert. This is what I.
So does that mean that you have the most amazing non-friction relationships? You're dating, you're married, you're happy as hell. You know exactly what you're doing. You never have a bad day, right? Like,
really love this question. So I think, and this actually goes even deeper into a concept about positivity versus consciousness. I think it's not about having a perfect relationship. It's not about having even a positive relationship. This word really irks me. It's about having a conscious relationship. Now, when I talk about relationships, right now we're speaking to romantically, but in general, everything in life is everything in life is a relationship. So that's at work with your employees, your colleagues, your team. That's with family. We have relationships. That is romantically. That's with your kids. You know, that's with a stranger you meet out at a coffee shop. That's this right now. These are all different versions of relationships. And I don't think that, once again, like I said, they need to be perfect or necessarily even always positive. They need to be conscious. And so what that means is there will be friction. And there will be moments where you disagree, and there will be moments where you have expectations, and maybe your partner is out in left field and doesn't even recognize. And this all comes down to how clear and aware are you within yourself of your own needs and desires and what's actually going on emotionally. And then how effective are you at actually communicating that in a way that's not blaming, that's not judging, that's not making the person wrong, but rather that's saying, this is how I feel right now. This is how I'd like to feel. These are the things I need from you. Are you open to offering me that? Does that feel good for you to help me get from here to here, to make me feel cared for or acknowledged or recognized or whatever it may be? So I don't think that it's about, like I wake up every morning and everything's glowing.
Yeah.
About me waking up and saying, I appreciate you. I acknowledge you. I recognize you. And this is also what I would love back from you. And this is why it's important for me.
So if you don't, you have to know this quote. You have to. I'm the quote guy, by the way. So my favorite quote, and I always say this all the time, but this is for real, my favorite quote. One of my favorite playwrights from 1934, George Bernard Shaw.
Okay.
Maybe you haven't heard it. Oh my God. What you do. This is the best thing ever.
Okay.
The single greatest problem with communication is the illusion that has taken place.
I've never heard of it. And let me hear this again. The single greatest
problem with the communication is the illusion that has taken place.
As in, you think it's happened, but it hasn't, or one person believes it has and the other one doesn't?
Exactly. You've said it in your head, but it didn't articulate out of your mouth.
I love this. Okay, so
I mean, that's a sentence that we could talk for 5 to 12 hours about.
yes, and I literally had this conversation a couple days ago with someone that was like, I swear I told you this, and I was like, no, but let's start writing things down.
There's two things. This quote and the book Extreme Ownership changed my life. Okay. And what I mean by that is no matter what happens with my employees, I'm using my employees. It all comes down to me.
Yes.
Because there's only 3 things that ever happen when something goes wrong. Either I didn't put proper expectations and timelines on it. I didn't communicate exactly what I need. And I didn't give them the details they needed. That's it.
Yeah. And all of that is actually communication. It's all clarity. It's all making everything very digestible for someone in order for them to then, reach those expectations of yours. But you're totally right. And there's a book by Jack Canfield years ago. He released this. I think he called it The Success Principles. That was the #1 chapter. Take 100% responsibility for everything in your life. And I really do think even that concept needs to come through in our communication. And when it does, people feel so much more responsive and open to you because once again, they don't feel blamed by you and they don't feel like you're making them wrong. They actually feel like you're standing up to the plate and taking responsibility, but still having a very clear conversation at the end of the day.
I want to explain to you something that happened this morning because you'll love it, right? Because this is the nuance of running a business and being CEO that a lot of people don't see. Okay. I have an employee. Okay. I have an employee who's having another baby. Okay. He came to work for me from a different field. And the reason he works for me is because he sold me so well that he annoyed the shit out of me. I hired him and he's going to make so much money. Okay. It's a big shift for him. Totally different field, doesn't know anything about it. He has been helping us with something else in the business. Okay. Because he has a couple different skill sets. Okay. He has had some issues where some things happened to his family's car. Somebody broke into it, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So all these things are happening, right? Yeah. So he's been doing some things the last couple of weeks and asking people, even though we told him not to ask us about his money and blah, blah, blah. And he needs this extra money. I know he's stressed, right? Money-wise. I find out again that he's asked somebody else again after I told him not to like 4 different times. Okay. So my initial reaction on Friday night was, I'm pissed. Okay. I'll handle it, blah, blah, blah. Well, instead of doing that, after I had 72 hours to digest it, I walked in and sat down and talked to him for 15 minutes about his life. Okay. How are you doing? What's going on? How are you feeling? And we didn't talk about business one bit. It was all about, hey, how are you dealing with this new baby coming and all this thing? He didn't ask for anything. He didn't want anything. Okay. I gave him the money that he needed ahead of time. Yeah. So he could stop being stressed, right? Okay. I didn't allude to the fact that I was frustrated or anything because that's only going to make him close up. Yeah, certainly. And I think also having a bigger understanding of what's going on allows you to be, 1, more aware in general of what's taking place in his reality. And 2, it allows us as humans to be more compassionate. I think compassion, it's really easy to be compassionate for someone when you have a bigger picture, there's a bigger understanding of what's actually going on. There's a book in my head and it's coming. I've got about 7 coming, but this one is like my favorite one that I'm going to write. And I don't know the name or like the concepts of it, but it all centers around leverage points. And what I mean by that is something to somebody else is 10x greater than it is to me. So that 15-minute conversation and that money I gave him, to me, in the big scheme of things, in our business is nothing, but to him, it's 30x. Yeah. And you're going to get an employee that will work that much more for you as well and have that much more appreciation and respect for you too. When you can nail those concepts and you can leverage those points, it means everything. Me going out to a customer and walking in their home and checking if everything we did was great is a 20x ROI for me. Yeah. Than just making a phone call. It's the little details. That's literally what it comes down to is and I say this in every type of relationship from business to romance, those little details and those incremental daily details that you put in
are the things that actually stand out to people, because they're so easily to be missed. You can just easily go about your day not actually implementing some of these details, and nobody would necessarily expect them from you. But when you do give that extra bit of attention to a client, let's say, or to an employee, or to your partner, whoever it may be, it goes such a long way. And I think that's actually what ends up building these connections. And like you said, you're doubling your ROI. You don't even realize how much that means to somebody. That builds a deeper level of respect and connection, and people want to keep you around for that reason. So
I want to ask you about something. So one of the things I identified with men, because I coach a lot of men, successful men, a lot of people that made a lot of money, right?
Okay.
And one of the things that we work on is ownership of needs and wants. Okay. And not from a relationship point of view. I'm talking about from them. Okay. The number one thing you know what men say all the time? Well, I'm doing this for you. And I say, no. I said, nobody asked you to. The moment that you own that this need to scale and grow is for you, then you can put it to bed.
Yeah. So every relationship starts with yourself. This is it. At the end of the day, it's so important for everybody to understand that whatever is taking place externally is actually a reflection of what's going on internally anyways. So, we talked about writing a book. I'm actually in the process of writing mine right now, and it's called The Connection Code. It will be coming out at the end of the year, but I have a 9-key system in this code of, means to be able to deeper connect with whatever relationship in your life. And I always say, when we get into every individual code, it actually doesn't have to do with the relationship externally first. It has to do with us looking internally. So, to give an example, very first key, I talk about curiosity. We need to first be curious about ourselves. What is going on internally? What are my needs? What are my desires? What are my boundaries? What's taking place inside? I need to be asking myself quality questions first, so then I can communicate clearly with you. Because if I don't understand what's taking place internally, how am I going to have a healthy relationship with you?
No, because dude, I told you, I've interviewed 700 people. I'm talking about Hall of Fame baseball players, dudes worth $1 billion, guys worth hundreds of millions. You want to know the number one skill that they have that makes them successful? Number one, I'll throw all of them out the other side.
Okay.
Curiosity.
I'm so happy you said that.
Do you want to know why? It doesn't matter how far they are in their life or how much money they have. You know what, Austin, tell me about this. And they whip out their notepad and they're writing it down. They're never done.
No, we never should be done. And it's so interesting because I've done so much research on this at this point, Austin, and there's a brilliant professor by the name of Todd Kashdan. And he talks about it. He literally graphs this out and he says, as kids, we're right up here, like as babies, we're right up here. Babies are super high level curious, putting everything in their mouth, touching everything, smelling everything, like super sensory experience, interacting with everything. As teens, that degree of curiosity drops drastically. And that's not because they're less curious. It's because they're afraid of looking foolish and asking the wrong question in the classroom and being judged by their peers. As adults, though, not only does it drop lower, it actually it concaves the gap. And why this graph shows concave in the degree of where adults sit in terms of the level of curiosity is because not only are we afraid of looking foolish externally, but we also assume we should already know it, or we assume we do already know it. And we're moving forwards once again with ego. And so it's like, oh yeah, I already know what that's about. And we're a lot of assumptions going on, a lot of thinking we know what's happening when we have no idea, or just afraid to look foolish once again in front of everybody and ask questions. And I think this creates a lot of problems in business because, you're in meetings, people are not asking the right questions they should. They go off and they do work and it's not the most accurate work because they're not even clear on what it is. Boss is not being clear once again in terms of what it is exactly that they want, and employees being afraid to ask. But then also, in just our everyday relationships, we can learn so much from every single human being in front of us if we just asked quality questions.
Dude, I'm teaching my sales guys right now. I'm teaching them, coaching them once a week. I said, you'll learn a lot more from a question than you will an answer.
110%.
It's dude, and I am an amazing question asker because what we do, right? I help a lot of people through addiction, right? And one of my clients is on his third divorce. He's been an alcoholic for 30 years. So he's a dad of a client, right? And the client said, look, dude, I cannot get to my dad. He is spiraling. I don't know what to do. He's never had coach. He's never had anything, right? He goes, dude, look, I'm sending you money. I'm not even asking for what you're going to do. He's like, just see if you can help him, right? So I got with him like 6 months ago.
Okay.
And what was happening, because he's from Texas, what was happening was it was a whose shit was bigger contest in the first 30 minutes, right? Who the fuck are you? And I said, let me tell you something, motherfucker. And I knew I had to be a different person in that moment because I had to earn his respect. Okay. I said, you wanted to know how you know your life of an alcoholic is deeper than you can climb out of? And he goes, tell me. I said, you drink vodka because it has no taste and you've lost taste in life.
Oh.
And he dropped the phone. He goes, how the fuck do you know that? I said, because I lived it for 20 years, motherfucker. And so boom, right? So I established frame. I got him, right? Okay. Yeah. I owned his respect. So he was going to get on a second phone call. That's all I wanted, right?
Yeah.
So we've been coaching for 6 months.
Okay.
Okay. I have never in my life uttered the words, stop drinking, drink less.
Yeah.
I've never done any of those things. He barely drinks now. Life is good, started a new career. All the people that haven't lived it think you need to talk about the thing. It's not the thing. The thing is the other thing.
It's 110%. And I think alcoholics, drug addicts have a very similar background with eating disorder.
Yes.
Let's say.
Do you want to know what's crazy, right? I've coached 12 to 14 people for 5 years straight every week, right? And you know what's wild to me? You name it. I've seen it. Okay. I know about it. It's crazy. You have no idea what I've heard. Okay. Do you want to know the thing that's messed people up the longest and the worst and the hardest for me to get people out of?
What is that?
Bankruptcy.
Because of their self-esteem goes to shit afterwards?
Because the shame of bankruptcy is too much for America. You can be an alcoholic. You can be a drug addict. You can get raped. All this. The shame of bankruptcy and money is the dirty secret in America.
And shame is probably, arguably, hands down, one of the lowest vibrational emotions and feelings that you can possibly experience.
Shame cycle.
It's the worst.
That with victimhood is impenetrable.
Yeah. I mean, and I think what's even worse is that it becomes our normal, you know, like that shaming voice that loops in the head. And for many people, they think that that's just a normal part of everyday living and it doesn't need to be. But it's almost like having to understand that there is an alternative voice, or there are multiple different voices that can offer a different perspective than just shame. So,
1,000%. So if I'm somebody out there and I want to get better at my relationship with myself, I want to get just in general, I want to communicate better. I want everything. Besides reading your book when it comes out, which I can't wait. You're coming back on the podcast to promote the book.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And I'm going to put you on like 30 other podcasts because I know everybody. All right. Where do they start?
Yeah. So as I said, key number one is always curiosity. And you got to start by asking yourself questions and then inquiring about other people and getting curious about them. The second piece to all of this is just the big umbrella term of being conscious. And if I were to give a really simple takeaway, where do you start in terms of your, journey of becoming more conscious or more aware of what's going on? I would say look at 4 areas: mental, emotional, physical, energetic. So in any environment, so this could be before a conversation, during one, and after one, or before a meeting, an interaction of any sort, during it and after it. You want to be aware of what's going on in your mind. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings in your body? How are your energy levels? And then, of course, how is your body speaking to you? And so these 4 areas are communication coming first within us that then get disseminated outwards. And so going back to our whole conversation about taking 100% responsibility, anytime I walk into any sort of a interaction, even this today, what did I do before I hopped on this podcast? I did a really great workout. And, I boosted my energy levels. I was out in the sun on my patio. I'm like totally just getting into a good place for myself. And that shows up energetically in, how we're having this conversation now. If I just rolled out of bed and I was exhausted and I didn't get a good night's sleep and I'm circling around all these other things I need to do today, now I'm not present. So as I like to say this as a business owner, but also just as a human being in your personal relationships. It's so important for you to, before going into any interaction with anybody else, check in with yourself. What am I thinking? Am I looping around? Are these thoughts actually benefiting me? Are they serving me? Yeah. Are they creating a feeling that is expansive or contractive? Or am I feeling, on a higher emotional vibrational level, or am I feeling sort of drained and tired? And then, of course, physically, is my body signaling to me? And, what does that mean exactly? You talked about doing big cases, $1.7 million businesses. You'd always feel sort of nauseous or like tense in the beginning. That is your body signaling. Now, does that mean you necessarily walk away from that? No, not at all. It's your body's way of saying, okay, we're protecting you because this is new and scary and you've never gone into it, but just be mindful. And so in a moment like that, I would say, let's just do a really simple breath practice.
Yeah.
And that can take, all of 5 minutes.
You want to know how I got past all this? And I just go forward. Everybody's like, man, your give a fuck is just like broke off. I'm like, what I realized a couple of years ago was, in order to be the best coach and leader that I need to, I have to walk through the fire door first.
Yeah.
I have to show you that it's okay. And so when it's for somebody else, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, then because you're like, I've been there. I recognize this. I've experienced it. Yeah. And it's really funny you say that, Austin, because every time, I was saying this to a girlfriend of mine last night, every time I have any sort of conflict come up in my own personal life, I'm always thinking, this is actually not for me. This is for a future client.
Dude, the moment, this is, people really will skew me for this. But the moment I got divorced, the moment that we separated, because it was coming for years.
Okay.
The first thought in my head was, I'm going to be able to help so many people because of this. I'm going to be intentional about this separation.
Yeah.
So and you know what happened? I've coached 7 people through divorces in the last 2 years.
Because you know it.
Because I know it. Doing it right now. Doing it with somebody else.
Okay.
Sometimes if you reframe it, then you create a space where you're like, okay, I'm going to be cognizant to this motion. And what people don't understand is, like, we had a lot of real estate together, and her family was my family, and it was a very awkward situation.
Okay.
And so I was very cold in the moment because I wanted to get out of the relationship with less shrapnel as possible, because it was going to be hard to untangle all that, right?
Okay.
But when I was by myself at night, I would cry for like an hour and a half straight.
Okay. Did you not feel you could show her that?
No, because somebody needed to stay strong in that moment, because it was very sticky. Like, we owned a lot of property together, and like we had to untwine all that. And so I wanted to keep the emotions straight.
Okay.
And so she called me out for it, and she said, you don't give a fuck. I said, let me tell you something. You don't know who I am, and you don't know what I'm doing when I'm by myself.
Okay.
And what I realized after doing a healing trip in Malibu is that I actually wasn't losing her. I was losing I was sad because I was losing somebody in my corner.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that relationship to me was done. Like, she was done. She was she's happier. Trust me, she's way happier separate. I'm happier separate. Yeah. And what I realized, it was actually like, we were done, but I was more like, okay, now I'm on my own. And I can tell everybody, dude, I know, I remember like it was yesterday. I was driving through Joshua Tree after I got in the car. I was supposed to go to Austin from San Antonio, and I drove to California instead.
Okay.
So I was just driving, right? I rented an Airbnb. It was like 3:00 in the afternoon. I had the windows down. I was listening to Kings of Leon, driving through the desert in California. I love it. Yeah. And it was the first time in 25 years that nobody needed me. That nobody was counting on me.
Yeah.
Nobody texts me. I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to answer to somebody. Dude, I felt like a new human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Nobody asked me what I wanted ever in my life.
Okay. So it's like fascinating because that's like, it's a huge liberation. On some level, it's definitely liberating. And I mean, like any relationship that ends, or even people that pass away, we go through different stages of grief. And I think there's, of course, the stage where we can be totally in denial, and moments where you feel like you really do want that relationship back. But there's also moments like this where you're like hugely liberated and you're like, wow, okay, there's actually a weight lifted and removed. Mm-hmm. What I wanted to say, just going back a bit to the piece about holding it down and being strong, I'm a very firm believer in being as transparent as possible. And I don't think that means breaking down and necessarily needing to be what we would call emotional. But I think I actually would want to hear from you. I'm trying to hold it down and be strong for both of us. And that's what I'm going to be. And I care. And you are important to me. And, I deeply respect you, or whatever it may be. And I'm going to take this time for me because I feel I need to be strong. Like, I would want to hear that from you.
Well, I wasn't mature enough to do that.
Yeah. And it's all, what age are
I'm just being honest. Yeah. I was gone. Okay. That guy, he had a rocket on his ass. He was exploring. Yeah.
Myself. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Years ago, and I still deeply respect a partner of mine for doing this. I had a partner of mine get in touch with me as we ended our relationship, and he called me and he said, I want you to know that I'm still in love with you. And because of that, I'm going to delete your number and block it and remove you from all social media. And he's like, I'm not trying to be a drama queen. And I'm not, he's like, I am too much engaged in your life still.
Well, how could he not? Right.
Yeah.
How could he not? Right. And so he is perfect example. I tell people, when you get sober, be careful when you take your sobriety on the road.
Oh, because
at home you have all your routine, you have everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's what's crazy, because I'm a lunatic. Okay. I got sober still making drinks for 6 months. I smell, because I did that for 20 years. I created the drink menu. Everybody's like, you are out of your mind. You're still working in a bar. I said, well, this is my job. I don't suggest that for other people.
Yeah.
So you have to create this bubble.
Yeah.
In a new relationship, in a new routine, in a new morning routine. And until it's locked in to who you are, be careful when you take it outside.
Well, and I love that you say this. There is this huge, I'm like, was this a conversation or a quote or something of the nature? Somebody had mentioned about monks, and monks can go off and live in these mountains for years and go do their meditations and be perfectly at peace. But the real test to whether you're actually doing the work and have really integrated all of that deeper wisdom and knowledge and knowing is actually when they come down from their mountaintop and enter back into the real world. And I think this is more of like a metaphor for life in general, that, it's not, of course, it's easy to say that we can seclude ourselves and be on our own and be perfectly calm. The moment you are put into running a business, managing people, getting into a relationship, having a divorce, anything that requires some sort of a relationship that's not just your own, but now you're with other people, that's when the real test comes.
Well, one of my favorite business guys says, your business works more on you than you work on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the truth, right? So if people want to find out about you, they want to follow your journey, how would they do that?
Yeah, everyone is more than welcome to come look at my work. I put my work up every day on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me at Giovanna.fjm.Elias. I can also send you the links, and you've got it down below. And you can check out my work at giovannaelias.co. And that's the gist of it. I'd be more than happy. I usually do 30-minute connection calls, and I just like to connect with people and get to know who they are and have a chat and see what's going on in your life. So I can also send that link and you guys can book a call with me.
I love that. Guys, if you got some value from this, send it to a friend and we'll see you next time.
Beautiful. Thank you.